Welcome back to the Getting Results Inc. podcast. I'm Coach Gino. Alongside is Super Coach, Coach Ken. Coach, how's it going?
Going well. We're on mission, keeping America safe for capitalism. Getting a lot of good feedback about keeping America safe for capitalism from the field. People need it. America needs it.
Excellent. America needs it, no doubt about that. So thank you for doing your duty. We appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank
We
you.
appreciate your service.
Free markets, free people.
Yes, indeed. And Rand will be
Yeah.
very, very proud of you.
He would be very proud. And for all of you out there, please read Ayn Rand, Fountainhead, Atlas Shrugged. There's a plug out to that. It'll change your world because it'll change your philosophy. Capitalism works. Socialism does not.
Yep. Great novels. All right, Super Coach. So today we're going to talk about mining the pattern interrupt. So, Coach, for our listeners out there who've never heard that, what is a pattern interrupt?
A pattern interrupt is just like it sounds, interrupting your normal patterns. You see, something may be lurking out there that you don't even know about that is slowly suppressing you and draining you of potential wealth and building a business. It's called your daily routines. It's the things that you do every day. Now, that sounds a little bit controversial because here's a few points. Your environment co-creates you. So whatever environment you're in, that is keeping a conversation alive subconsciously as well as consciously. You've heard us rail against being in your office all the time, that your office is really a place for the maintenance and the administration of a business. Or if you listen to Tip of the Spear or On Your Duff, like if you're on your duff in your office all day, a referral-only business, maybe, but not really, because those referrals are often random. A lot of times they are not your ideal client. So let's get back to this idea of this pattern interrupt. So if your environment co-creates you, and once you get into a routine, that routine starts self-reinforcing. It begins to repeat itself. Now you may be thinking, so what? Who cares? I love structure. Structure sets you free. That's what we say all the time. But sometimes your structures can also trap you. Now, you might be wondering, where am I going with this? For all of you out there, let me ask you a question. I want you to think about your wealthiest clients, your clients who have the most money, who make the most impact on the world. They have the most money for one of three reasons. Number one, they're a business owner. Number two, they're inheritors, if that's a word, of former business owners. Number three, somehow it's coming out of the ground. Or they stumble upon mineral rights and they're just making a buku dollar from oil, gas, mineral rights, etc. Now, what I want you to think about is that business owner. Where did that wealth come from? Now, this is why we want to do a pattern interrupt. Hard work can make you rich. There is no doubt. Hard work can make you very rich. But if you want to get wealthy, wealthy is not just about hard work. What you'll notice in the realm of wealth is often rooted in innovation and creativity. What you'll see is that those business owners noticed something different. They came up with a new idea. They came up with a new way to manage people, how to do logistics, or they saw a gap in the marketplace that nobody else saw. So that begets this interesting inquiry is, where do innovation and creativity come from? And if we really think about that for a moment, it is often because we get this moment of insight or a eureka moment. And if you remember the whole story about, was it Archimedes, I believe, who shouted Eureka when he figured out how much the gold weighed in the crown, right? And he was naked in the bathtub, then he ran down the street yelling Eureka. Now, obviously, if that was in today's day and age, he'd be in the clink. But back then in Greek times, they were a little bit more, they liked naked a little bit better, as you know, Gino.
Yes.
So Eureka moments, where do they come from? Well, they come from new inputs. New inputs lead to new output. If you continue the same input, you like your structure, you like your routine, you do the same shit each day, every day, without fail. There's cool to that, but if we do not plan in or create a pattern interrupt, we are not creating the space for innovation and creativity.
Super Coach, just to be clear, right? We both will agree, structure sets you free. It's good to have a structure, right?
No doubt. Yes.
And what you're pointing at, I think, is when that structure's working for you, yes, it's fantastic. But there are going to be times where that structure, you may get stuck. You may feel like you're not getting to that next level that you want to get to. And what do we typically do? I'll bear down even more. I'll come in earlier. I'll leave later. I'll do more, right? I'll stay late. But still, you get the same result. What we're talking is how does a pattern interrupt fit into that situation?
Because if you continue to work hard, you continue to do the things that you've always done, you keep repeating them, you're going to get incremental returns instead of exponential.
Bingo.
And that exponential breakthrough will come from innovation or creativity. Now, we're going to begin to refine this even more. So hopefully the first point is a pattern interrupt. Well, let's begin to define what's a pattern interrupt, or what do you really mean?
Yes.
Well, we can go from the really simple to the more complex.
Well, let's do that. Let's go
really
simple
pattern interrupt. Let's go simple, right? Simple thing is, each of you probably has a favorite restaurant, and I'm going to put notice my pattern interrupt shirt of how cool this shirt actually is. I could be like a superhero,
very
Clark
metrosexual,
Kent,
very nice.
Captain Kirk. I got the stash going. It's my ode to the 70s or 80s. Okay, simple pattern interrupt. You all have a favorite restaurant, and guess what? Each time you go to that restaurant, you order the same thing. Why? Because it's good. And it's predictable. We like patterns, we like structure because it provides a level of safety and a comfort so your mind can go on autopilot. Most of the day, your mind is on autopilot. Not a bad thing, it's just the way it is. But once again, notice when you go to the restaurant, you get the same thing. Why? Because it's good. Okay, now a very simple pattern interrupt can be you go to the same restaurant. Instead of getting what you always get something different. Now, by getting something different, you've exposed yourself to randomness, a new input. Now, this is a relatively minor pattern interrupt, but let me give you a little bit more context for this. In the Bible, it says, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be answered. Seek and ye shall find. But if you're not clear on what you're seeking, you ain't finding. So ask yourself, what is the inquiry? What is the puzzle you are trying to figure out? So before you go to the restaurant to change your meal, ask yourself, what is the puzzle you're trying to figure out? Are you trying to increase the average revenue size of a client? Are you trying to increase your overall level of production? Are you trying to only work Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday and figuring out how staff can work Thursday and Friday? Or like one of our clients, shout out to Wayne Pearson in Texas. He is currently, his puzzle that he's figuring out, he's currently spending a month in Colorado. Why? Because he can. And guess what? Because his business is still running without him. Now, all of you out there, I want you to imagine going away from your business for a month and it's still functioning. See, that's what's possible when you work with Getting Results Coaching. So it's in that pattern interrupt when we begin to get new inputs. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get an aha moment or anything's going to happen by eating a steak instead of the lobster tails, but it can. It creates a probability wave. Or you drive home a different way. If you guys commute, you drive the same way each day, every time. Why? So you don't have to think. Your mind's on autopilot. You don't see anything anymore. If you go home a different way, you will notice something that you did not notice before. Now, once again, that may not be a big deal. That may not change anything, but you may notice a coffee shop that you've never been to, and you're like, man, let me go explore that coffee shop. And you go in and grab a cup of coffee, you bump into the mayor of the town, and suddenly you got a new friend, and God knows where that can go. Probability stacks, pattern interrupts, right? The next level of business comes from innovation and creativity. So a minor one, right? Going to the restaurant, ordering something different. Okay, let's step it up a bit. If you constantly read fiction books, learning how to conquer the world, change it up. Read a nonfiction book. Read Watership Down about the Rabbit Rebellion. Why? New input leads to new output.
Yep.
Now, here's another strange thing about business, right, in general. If you're boring, your business is going to be boring. If you can't handle a conversation on a different topic, you're not going to meet as many people as you can. If you change your inputs, you're now creating literally new outputs. Like one of the things that fascinated, like I don't interrupt that Gino and I recently went on. We were in Texas for a week. And we got to hang out with our $4 million guy or $5 million guy. And with just for little fact checks, when he started with us, he was in a million in production. Now he's at 5 million in production. 5 million in production. Did I say that? Yes, I did. And it's true.
5.
So I know you out there. I know you guys want that. So what was fascinating and what I really learned from being with him is that he's like, Ken, I need to have multiple interests because high performance requires me to switch gears every now and then because it gets me excited. It re-energizes me. And I think that is one of the best coaching tips that I've heard in a long time. Okay.
Agreed.
He has literally consistent pattern interrupts. And this guy is next level stuff because one of his pattern interrupts that he created for himself to percolate innovation and excitement and new and different is be a ranch, like thousands of acres with horses, zebras, exotics, the whole 9 yards. So he has an opportunity to change his complete environment every few months. He gets that advantage of shifting his entire environment, which creates probability waves of new inputs. And it's when we have new inputs, that's when new output can happen. So if anyone is stuck and bored in their business or they're hitting a certain level in production, it may be time to A, figure out what your inquiry is. Okay, so if you want to increase production, now we have to, this is not easy. Excuse me, it is easy to increase your production. What's hard about increasing your production is defining how much you want to increase your
Yep.
production by. Right,
Yep.
Gino, when you say that's the hard part, now why is that the hard part?
Because again, if you keep doing it the same way over and over again, and you're going to get that same result, so it's going to require you to do something different to get to that next level of wherever you're trying to get to, right? And that pattern interrupt
Correct.
hopefully is going to give you a new input for which you can then get that next level of performance that you're looking for from that pattern interrupt or that new input.
Correct. And just the hard truth is, if you're looking to up your production by an additional $10,000 a month, noble, right, good cause, that is way different from increasing your production by 200,000 a
Mm-hmm.
month. Okay, like if you're currently doing 15, 20, or maybe you're even doing $80,000 a month in production, getting to 90, not that it's not, it's once again, it's not easy, but it's not hard either. You can figure out how to get to that. Doesn't require a lot of thought to
Mm-hmm.
go from 80 to 90. But to go from 80 to $200,000 a month in production, like some of our clients are doing, it takes a little bit of innovation and creativity. There has to be a new way of, what is that, almost 2.5 times your current production. You got to think a little differently, new input.
I think one of the biggest things with that, and I don't remember what book it was, but I thought it was really, really spot on, is that it's 80,000. There are so many different routes to get there. There's a bunch of different options. But when you make that a more hairy, bigger goal, well, now your options get reduced, which means you have to put your focus in more and really figure out what is that path. And once you figure out that path, then you can get there. That's one of the big things that I think is when you get to that bigger, hairier goal, might not be as many choices, but the one you pick is going to be the one that you put your full attention on and go.
Spot on, spot on. Right? That's what we talked about at the peerage, right?
Yep.
With the whole concept of 10xing. And let's continue this idea of the pattern interrupt. Now let's go to a little bit more of a complex level. Let's really begin
Ooh,
to shake up things.
that's
So
that's
if we're going to really begin to shake up things, I would say if you're going away to a seminar, you're going away for a weekend, you're going away for a deep dive, like what we do with getting results in the peerage, where
yep.
you're surrounded by people who are up to stuff, who are encouraging you to take risks, to build a business by design that calls to you. It's like the people we brought to the peerage this year in February. I mean, a lot of them at their 10 times goals are already hitting them. Like some of our clients are already building their dream houses and they already put, and that goal was 5 years from now and they accomplished it in 6 months, right? Or people working on getting in shape
Mm-hmm.
and losing weight or building great businesses, right? Because the peerage created a catalyst, gave them new input. Not only did it give them new input, but they had real life examples that it was possible. Like in the peerage, we have people who own planes, who are pilots. And for those that thought that was a dream of theirs, when they see a real life person who is a peer, who also has an airplane, suddenly it becomes that much more possible for the individual. Because there's an interesting thing. Sometimes we got to push ourselves to the edge, if you will, to see how far we can go, or to see where that edge really is. Like if you've listened to some of our podcasts in the past, one of the ones was about doing hard shit.
Mm.
Okay, and one way to practice doing hard shit is a cold plunge. Okay, now initially a cold plunge for 2 or 3 minutes at 45 degrees, 48 degrees, whatever the temperature, it's cold and it
Oh,
hurts,
yes,
right?
sir.
It hurts. But a fascinating thing happens because once you do it 3 minutes, if you're like me, which many of you are, you think, I wonder if I can go to 4. I wonder if I can go to 5. And then all of a sudden, you're really, really beginning to push it, like going to the edge. So I've learned that the edge for me in the cold pool is around 20 minutes. That might not be actually safe. So when I came out, I was shivering, etc. But now I know that 20 minutes is more than enough. But what's really cool about pushing yourself to that edge, you can do 10 minutes relatively easy,
And by the
right?
way, that's
And
also
the
a
whole,
great pattern interrupt, too, by the way.
oh, huge. Yeah, I was just about to mention that,
It's-
right? That's a huge pattern interrupt because what most of us do when we wake up in the morning, we roll out of our comfy, cozy bed.
Right.
You have your normal routine for breakfast and you go to work. Very few of us, when you wake out of the bed in the morning, do you go into a cold plunge, which is not necessarily fun, but it's a pattern interrupt. It's a new input, and new inputs lead to new output. And once again, it comes down to creativity and innovation are the breakthrough. So one of my other examples of pattern interrupts, Curiosity Day. I wrote an article about Curiosity Day. But what Curiosity Day is literally in your schedule, whether you do it on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, weekly is a little tough, but monthly, like one day out of the month, designate that as Curiosity Day. Go do new and different things. Open yourself up to new input. Fast example of that, when I travel, I try to get to some place that I normally wouldn't go to. Like when Gino and I were in Texas, we went to the Frontier Museum. Now, that is not a normal trip I would make, but I was recommended by one of our clients. And just that simple input of the Frontier Museum, not that either of us had this breakthrough or we're thinking about, oh my God, we're going to build a whole new infrastructure. But one of the things that we did learn is that they were really tough people. I mean,
Yes.
that, like compared to
Very.
how lucky, very tough. And compared to our lives today, and like when we start whining or complaining about something, nothing like
Not
living in a
comparable.
dirt house or being scalped by Indians and fighting rattlesnakes each day.
Yep.
So, once again, new input leads to new output. Warning, warning, Will Robinson, warning. What a lot of people do in financial services or in the business, they're like, man, I'm going to read the Wall Street Journal now from front to cover, or I'm going to start reading that prospectus, or I'm going to go dive into hypnotic selling and all the other more business stuff. With love, that's the same input.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the scary things about humans, we have a tendency to be domain dependent. And what domain dependent simply means is that whatever environment you're in, you stick into it. Okay, like at work, work has its own silo, your
Right.
hobbies have another silo, your family has another silo, and we have a tendency to be domain dependent. The real value comes if you can begin to cross-pollinate domains. Like one of the biggest advantages I had, I believe, earlier in my career is that I had a martial art. I studied Ketsugo Jiu-Jitsu, and I could see the principles in the art also in business. And I applied the principles to business, and it gave me that slight edge. So just like all of you out there, if you have a particular hobby that you love, simply ask yourself, how could I apply this to business? Or how could I apply that to my inquiry of increasing production by $100,000 a month, by cutting your clientele in half and doubling your income, okay? Or creating a team where you don't have to come to the office
Yep.
anymore. It's the inquiry that matters. And that the more new input you get with the same inquiry, the greater the probability of new output.
Super Coach, you mentioned some different pattern interrupts. Let's give some more, some, so that people can really maybe increase their toolbox of some simple things and some other things they could do for pattern interrupts, right? So you mentioned cold plunge. I happen to be a big fan of that one. You talk about pattern interrupt, changing your state, like those days when you're feeling a certain way and then you jump in that cold plunge and boom, that anything that happened up prior then just totally kind of almost evaporates, and now you're clear headed to go forward. So I think that's a favorite of ours. What are some other examples of just simple pattern interrupts, just to make it that much easier for people to see the opportunity, and how they can easily put that into their day in life?
Yeah. But you have to go back to what is your inquiry. So we can go, if you're in a particular state, like you're physically in a state, you're bored, you're tired, you're emotional, right? Or you just got in a fight with the spouse,
Yep.
etc. Or you're in the middle of a fight with your spouse. Now, if you're aware enough, you now have a choice. You're like, wow, I can continue the fight, which we all know is not going to end well, right? It never ends well.
Never does.
You can never be right. So if you're wise enough, St. G.I. Joe says knowing is half the battle. If you're in that state, break the pattern. Go for a walk around the block, right? Create distance between you and the person that you're arguing with. And literally, I mean physical distance. Like go get new inputs. Like go jump in the cold pool, go sit in the sauna, go lift weights. Don't go to the bar. And that usually doesn't turn out well.
No.
Okay, that's one example. The other examples would be you're feeling stuck or you're not clear on where your business is going. Okay, then take that step back and ask yourself, okay, what is the inquiry? What is the puzzle that I'm trying to figure out? Like, what is the vision? Okay, and then if you can get that idea somehow encapsulated, okay, then begin to look for alternative inputs, i.e., go to the library, go to the bookstore. In the bookstore, go to a section you normally don't go to. Scan the section, see what calls to you, what's jumping out for you.
Hmm.
Grab the book and read it with that inquiry in mind. You'd be surprised on how weird it is that you pull out a random book and that you can begin to find hints or clues to the puzzle that you're trying to figure out.
Super coach. So it sounds like there's a couple ways you can use a pattern interrupt. One, to change your state, your mind, your mental state, and another one is to change maybe the actions or activities or behaviors you're doing. Does that sound, accurate?
In addition to, is also changing intellect, what your brain is doing.
Yes.
Like, because as I said in the
Good
beginning
one.
of the call, real wealth comes from innovation and creativity. Okay, right? It's the innovation, and it doesn't have to be life-changing innovation. It could be a small tweak to something that you're already doing. But the hard part is, if I ask you, oh, here, a quick exercise for everybody, right? If you follow along with me, you'll learn something for the rest of your life. So wherever you are, if you're driving, don't do this, but if you're in a room or your office or wherever you are, go find the nearest wall. Okay, and once you find the nearest wall, put your nose against the wall and close your eyes. Okay, so once your nose is against the wall and your eyes are closed, ready, deep question, I'd like you to open your eyes. What do you see? Right? Wow, you can see nothing but
Very little of it.
wall, and very little of it is just wall. You might even be able to tell me the color of your wall, but that's it. Now, if I ask you to step back 3 feet, all of a sudden you got this thing called peripheral vision. You can begin to see the rest of the room. You can see the ceiling. You can see the floor. Wow, now you're getting a little bit of perspective, but now you're beginning to see the entire room. Now, deeper question here, deeper. If I ask you to step back 3 miles, now what do you see? Now your
Oof.
perspective is completely changed. You see the roll of the hills, the forest, or whatever your office place looks like from 3 miles away. It's much different from 2 inches, 3 feet, 3 miles, much different perspective. So distance creates perspective, right?
Hmm.
Distance creates perspective. Just like when you go on vacation, you're creating distance from your business, distance from your normal family life. You're creating distance. And it's in that distance that perspective can be created, that you can see things that you normally don't see. Now, what's always ironic, our clients who we get to double the amount of vacation that they're doing, or they're starting to take 6 weeks, 8 weeks of vacation, a fascinating thing happens. Their income increases by leaps and bounds. Okay. And it makes you wonder why. Well, it's once again, real wealth is not necessarily from hard work. It's coming from innovation and creativity. And it's that distance which therefore then creates perspective. Now, there's even historical reference to this concept, right? The idea of going into the wilderness. Of going into the wilderness. Moses on the mountain for 40 days. Jesus wandered the desert for 40 days. The Israelites wandered the desert for 40 years. Buddha sat under the Bodhi tree for 6 or 7 years.
We
It's this
hunted on
level
the
of
Great Plains of Texas where you could see for 30 miles in front of you. Talking
once
about
again the Great
perspective.
Plains of Texas. Correct. See, sometimes it's that distance, right? That pattern interrupt. Going for a
Yep.
hike in the woods, going for a walk along the beach. Now, you can dial this in more and more by you actually begin to structure it into your normal way of being. There's some firms that have this dialed in on a level that's a different level. There's some firms that are running div trips on a regular basis that people participate in, right, and get some to break patterns, right,
Mm.
which is
Yep.
brilliant. Okay, there's a level of brilliance to that, and then you should take advantage of that stuff. It's available to you. But if you don't have that available, this idea of a consistent vacation, and then when you go on vacation, do new and different things, and then think about the inquiry on the plane there and the inquiry on the plane home, and what you learned and how it can apply to your inquiry or that puzzle box you're trying to figure out. See,
Yep.
it's pretty cool when you begin to take on business as a practice. It's a practice, it's a way. Like literally, you're trying to figure it out. Like, how can I continue to play the game and hone the game? But you also have to understand yourself. Same input leads to same output. Okay, if you commute the same way to work, you start the same day, same time, you end the same time, and you're running a great structure, right? And you got everything dialed in. Part of our brain goes to sleep on that. You need a consistent and planned pattern interrupt. You can do it from the small to the large. The larger you go, the greater the probability that you're going to have an exponential breakthrough. Like if you like a big pattern interrupt, say, hey, you're going to figure out how to conduct your business and spend 6 months in Spain, that's going to create a lot of evolution for your business because it has to. We can begin
Coach,
to
let me
talk
just
about complex systems too.
well, let's add something to that too. I think on the bigger type of pattern interrupts, yeah, there's going to require more planning, but don't let that get in the way of a pattern interrupt in the moment. If you need that change, there's not a whole lot of planning. It's more of find that thing that's going to help you separate from whatever you're dealing with right now and get that interrupt, like you were saying earlier. Go for a walk, do some push-ups, lift some weights, whatever it is. Don't overthink it. Just get a new input just to change your state, and that way you can get back at whatever it is you were looking to do.
I say there's two distinctions, right? You have a mood management, right, and managing
Yeah,
your
that's a good
mood
way
and
to
your
put it.
being,
Yes.
right? There's a pattern into there. What I'm talking about a little bit more is the intellectual side of
Right.
things, of
Yeah.
using your brain and seeing things that you normally wouldn't see,
Yep.
which will require new input. Okay,
Yep.
you spend a week reading Robert Frost, okay,
Hmm.
or you take on painting just because, or right, not that you can do
Picking
anything
up the
good.
piano, whatever it
Yeah,
might be.
you playing the piano, playing the guitar, going to a new venue. I mean, that's the beautiful thing, is that there are no guarantees in life, but we can stack probabilities in our favor. Okay, there's no guarantee you're going to innovate or have a massive breakthrough in your business, but you can stack probabilities. So the more new input that you're getting, the more that you are stacking probabilities in your favor. Okay.
Nice.
Like I remember it's a true concept. I was coaching a leader of a major firm, and this dude is banging out a book on leadership every week or 2 weeks, and Christ, he was reading like a monster in leadership books. And I said to him, I said, you already are a good leader. I mean, that's already established. Maybe, just maybe, we should look to another domain because that would help his leadership exponentially, right? If you already are an expert or you're really good at what you're doing, looking to another genre, I don't know, Indian history, or he begins to play the guitar, that would enhance his leadership. I know that doesn't make logical sense, but it does. Your brain has this thing called plasticity, right? The neurons that you develop are used by each part of your brain. Like literally, the smarter you become in one arena, the smarter you become in all arenas.
Yep. You gave me some coaching when we were in Texas. Is I had mentioned podcasts, and I had a lot of health and fitness, and I've been kind of bored with it and kind of stuck with it. And now it's broadening my perspective and changing topics to some other podcasts so that I get those new inputs. And so far so good, but just that simple change has made a huge difference for me. It's helped me reignite my want to learn again
But
and learn a
awesome,
new topic, right? So I think that was a nice little interrupt for me for sure.
awesome. And then what you'll also notice is that in time, whatever it is that other podcasts that you're studying or diving into, you're going to begin to see parallels over into the fitness world,
Right.
right? Or how to make your levels of fitness understanding that much better. How can I say this? Is that there's a concept in Zen that says he who masters nothing masters
That's just
everything.
everything.
Obviously, that's a little bit of a koan, and once again, not logical sense. He who masters nothing masters everything. Now we can have a whole other podcast on that one, but that still idea of mastery, like an understanding of one thing. If you truly understand one thing, you therefore can understand all things. It's just like within coaching, like why we are so effective in coaching financial advisors is this. There are universal principles that we help you apply to your business. Right? And what's weird that can also apply to your golf game. I can't tell you how many golfers we have dropped their whatever that's called, their was that word,
Handicap.
their teeth, handicap, right? I don't play golf. See, I don't play golf, but I bet you I can improve your golf game because the principles are the same.
Yep.
It's the same thing in financial services because the common denominator in all things is you, is the human element and how the human learns, how the human adapts, and how the human performs. Same principles are in each arena. It's just that we have specialized in financial services because we know the language, we know how to move people. If you're running levels, want to come 2, 3 levels in 6 to 24 months really quickly. And the fun part is seeing people who have a business by design, who have a business that they own, and it doesn't own them.
Mm.
And then they get the business to produce as much money as they choose, which is a fascinating thing because man, everybody's wired. What do you mean as much money as you choose? You got to make as much money as you can. Well, that begets a question. How much money can you make? I can make $1 million. Is that all? And the answer is always no. No matter what number it is that all? Is that all you can do? You know the answer. It's no. But the hard part about that one is it's kind of like building a bridge to infinity. If you don't know where you're going, you can never get there. So the more specific you are, like in the inquiry that I talked about earlier, the greater the probability you have to hit it. Because once again, there's a big difference between doing an extra $10,000 a month in production and an extra $200,000 a month in production. Both are more, but if you're not clear on how much more, you cannot build the systems and structures behind it to make that thing so.
Yep. Awesome
Whew,
stuff, Super
it's like a whole
Coach.
it's like a whole coaching program here.
Yeah,
Damn,
no doubt, no doubt.
damn. Wait, we're giving this away for free? What happened?
Well,
What happened? What happened
maybe
to this? We got.
we'll have an ask at the end of this. So, Super Coach, any last thoughts on pattern interrupts before we close out our episode?
Any last thoughts on a pattern? I found that they are highly valuable for high performing people. Quite simply, high performance requires high maintenance. No one likes to be called high maintenance. But if you are making a significant amount of money, like over $500,000 a year, you're a prima donna. You're a mutant. You require high maintenance. If you'd like to double, triple, quadruple that number, you're going to need a lot more maintenance. Just like a Ferrari. You drive the Ferrari around the block a couple times, or you bring it to the track. You got to change the oil, change the tires. Okay, it's because why? It's a Ferrari. Now your F-150, you can drive that forever. Right? Drive through fields, run over things, run over
Mm-hmm.
tumbleweeds, crash stuff, and you don't have to maintain it. See, the illusion is you think you're an F-150, when in reality you're a Ferrari. And if you really want to perform, maintenance, high performance requires high maintenance. So even, once again, you're doing 1.2, 1.5, $2 million a year, you think you got it all handled? Do you? Do you? And oh my God, what if you actually took care of yourself and you actually did a little bit of maintenance work? I bet you
Mm.
could get to 4. I could bet you get to 5 if you chose. Or go to Spain for 6 months and still have your business function. How fun is that?
Definitely. Thank you, Super Coach. And the challenge to all you listening, go with the pattern interrupt today, tomorrow, this week. Remember this podcast, figure out what will help you change your state or get a new input so that you can get new ideas, new creativity. It may just give you that slight edge to take it to the next level, physically, mentally, spiritually, business. So that's our challenge to
Yeah,
you, right? By the way, also, those of you listening and you're interested in coaching, at gettingresultsinc.com, we have a personal assessment out there where you can go out and fill out some information, really give some thought to your business, what you're looking to accomplish. Start an inquiry, start a conversation where we can sit down and talk with you and see if you're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for you. That's the place to start. So if you're thinking about coaching, go to gettingresultsinc.com, go to the personal assessment, and get the process started. To our listeners, if you enjoyed today's podcast and got value from it, please be sure to share and follow our podcast, hit the like button, and or give us a rating. We can be found on both Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and gettingresultsinc.com under resources. Tune in next week for our next episode. Be great.
If you listened to the full podcast today, we really appreciate it and hope that you've received value out of the time you've invested. If this conversation resonated and you'd like to learn more about the Getting Results Inc. coaching process, please visit our website at gettingresultsinc.com. Once on the site, we invite you to complete a personal assessment which will provide you a complimentary 45-minute exploratory session with one of our highly experienced coaches. We will investigate what your business challenges are and discover how we can help you take it to the next level. Thanks again for listening in, and stay tuned for our next podcast.